Yes, guys, how you doing? Welcome back to the Spurs Talk Show. I am Sean Butler. I hope you're all happy and healthy. I've got something on my eyelid. What's going on there? I hope you're all happy and healthy, doing the things you love with those you love to do them with. Start that again. Guys, what's going on? It's Monday. It's September the 8th. I took the weekend off. You may or may not know why. I was up at a little wedding do, a little do as you do. Henry Wright. Henry Talks Bolux.com was getting married to a lovely lady named Bex. And I had to go up there and I was very, very much looking forward to going up there and getting amongst it. It was a wild evening, and I can't share all of the details that I would like to. Not yet. Anyway, not yet. At some point, I will be able to. But yeah, it was interesting. It was a beautiful place. The wedding was fantastic. The food was lovely. The drinks were brilliant. Whoever it was that paid for the wedding put on an absolute show, and it was one of those memorable days. But obviously, with that happening, you know, someone took the decision to drive up, knowing me, and I thought I'm going to drive there. And I'll just stay because I don't know anybody there. I'll show my face and sort of get out after the when the party starts to come to get going, and I'll drive back home. And it would be a good way of doing it. Instead, I got there, and within 5 minutes, the father of the bride had a couple of beers in me, and then all of the groomsmen took me under their wing for the night, and so I had to book a hotel. And you know, things went out of control as they do. And so I didn't get a chance to really sort of do much yesterday. And I didn't feel like I missed too much in the world of Tottenham. But there's been a massive announcement late last night, and we're going to go through it now. You know, this guy right here loves a thing or two about a financial thing or two. And it's time for me to bore you to tears with, well, what we can figure out, what I've figured out, or who these people are, with Dr. Roger Cameron Kennedy and Mr. Wing, NG of Firehawk Holdings. We know a little bit more about Staveley and her consortium, although we don't know who the consortium is made up of. But there is some inferences and some interesting takeaways. We're going to look at the statement. What does that mean? There's a lot of fine print, fine detail that some of you may not know about, but are interested. Others you might know about, but don't care. And others of you might not know and not interested. But on this channel, we like to cover all things Tottenham and all things football. We're not going to be able to get the entire thing done here. So at 2 o'clock, in an hour and 20 minutes, I'm going to be going over to Football Inc. to carry on, get Johnny's take on it as well. And look, it's quite an interesting story. I'm also going to have to invoke a little bit of, you know, the kind of the background to some of the things that have been happening, right? So, you know, I know Johnny's talked a lot about how, you know, when Charrington came in March, that was the first sign of things changing. You know, I was sort of saying back in December when that share issue was announced, and there was a lack of clarity from any of the people that should know whether it was 12 million or 30 million. The numbers didn't make sense. There was no clarification in the media or from the company about what that looked like. And then in January, you had the NDAs with Amanda Staveley. It was pretty obvious to me from back then, and I was saying it for the entire year, that things are definitely happening. Obviously, no timelines around when. But the NDAs were signed. And so, you know, these things take a long time to figure themselves out. The fact that Tottenham had to come out and respond to media speculation around these two bids, well, the legalities of doing so, if they're expressions of interest, and I'll come to all this as we get going, but the legalities of doing so are that you have to make, you know, minority shareholders and basically everybody else aware. You have to do it. And so the fact that they've done it now would suggest that these two, whether they happened very recently or whether the conversation started back in January or earlier. Don't forget, of course, you know, Tottenham were funded or were what's the word? They essentially exercised the option to take on the guys at Rothschild's bank to seek investment a year and a half, 18 months ago. And so a lot of these things have been in the works for a long time. Now it seems like it's all coming to a head. And what we have now is 28 days between what's happened yesterday, last night, and a deadline for a full takeover from either of those two parties. We'll talk about who they are and what they're into and whether they're feasible or whether we should be interested in them. to materialize. It doesn't mean that there's a deadline between now and October the 5th for minority investment. And certainly it has absolutely no bearing on things like sponsorship deals or injections of capital. We'll talk through the statement, we'll go through the fine print, and then we will look into what I can find on these guys, especially the Firehawk group, because it's quite interesting how difficult it is to find relevant information about this group and their various investments. They're obviously mainly from Asian market, but they have US education, and they are actually invested in one company specifically that is, I don't know if it's like if it's a good sign or a bad sign, but they're the CEO, or one of the guys is the CEO, and the other guy, Dr. Roger Cameron Kennedy, is a non-exec board director on a company called Triller. I don't know if you've heard of Triller. Triller was initially, back in the day when TikTok was called Musical.ly, back in the day, Triller was like a rival of that company. And then more recently, obviously, TikTok took over and blew up in that regard. Triller moved away from sort of like, kids dancing or whatever, and just whatever you would describe TikTok as these days, into more of like a DAZN, a DAZN, like they do sports streaming but not of the same degree, smaller size, like the little bro of DAZN, which is the little bro of obviously, any of the other streaming companies that are sports based out there. And so I don't know whether or not the overlap is exciting, or whether it's a bit of a concern that it's the smallest of that version of sports streaming. But you do know that in the future, Tottenham Hotspur and all the Premier League parties are going to be having to renegotiate their broadcast rights deals. And there's a lot of sort of hypothesis and sort of second guessing around whether or not that will remain in the hands of companies like Sky Sports and TNT, or whether it will move into like a Netflix of sport. And maybe, just maybe, this would be a stepping stone to it. But Triller is the one big, I'm not going to call them a huge company, but the one company there where you can actually find a little bit of information, a bit more detail about who these people are. And also from there, you can kind of research back into who are the other investors in that particular company. Where do they, where have their investments and their expertise gone to in the past? And where it lands on is essentially some summaries around lots of interest in banking, in private equity, and primarily overseas funded operations. But we'll come to all of that, guys. We'll come to all of that in just a second. Please do smash the like button for me. Hit the subscribe if you haven't already. Hit the notification bell and drop a comment. If you do enjoy this stuff, let me know. If you don't enjoy it, then let me know. I'm still going to have to do it anyway, because that's what we're here to do. I don't know what you want from me. It's what I'm interested in. Keep the comments thick and fast, guys. By the way, this video is also sponsored by the great people over at OK Jersey. You can see down this side, okjersey.com is the website, and this one is an updated QR code. The last one, I think there were some issues with, so apologies about that. But you can get 8% off what is already incredible value on all of your Tottenham shirts, all of your various other supported club shirts, if you are interested in that sort of thing. 8% off on what is already amazing value, the best shirts and the best quality in town, with the code Sean at discount, SEAN. I don't know if it needs to be lowercase or not, but Sean is the code. And we'll be giving away some shirts as well in either maybe today, maybe later on today's show, maybe tomorrow. Either way, guys, let's start off with, let's say hello to some people. Oh, got a pic of the 40-year-old and her dad from the weekend. I can't talk about that, mate. Can't talk about that. All I will say is it was interesting meeting the parents on a first date. Less said the better. Also, never sell to the. Oh, hang on, not going to say that. From son Heung Min to son-in-law, my captain. Appreciate you, Drew. I hope you're okay, man. By the way, Connor's going to be joining us in a little while as well, because there's lots to go through, and it'd be good to get a different take on it. But my initial suggestions are, if I'm entirely honest, the second of these consortiums we are not as interested in as the first. Let's have a little look-see. What's going on here? Is that better? No? How do I do this? Hang about. What's going on here? That will do. Let's start with and see what this is all about, right? So the board of Tottenham Hotspur Limited is aware of recent media speculation and confirms that its majority shareholder, Enix Sports and Development Holdings has received and unequivocally rejected separate preliminary expressions of interest in relation to proposals to acquire the entire issued and to be issued share capital of ENIC from PCP International Finance Limited, and separately a consortium of investors led by Dr. Roger Kennedy and Wing Fi NG through Firehawk Holdings Limited. As a consequence of ENIC's majority ownership interest in Tottenham Hotspur, were any offer to acquire ENIC and complete, a mandatory offer would be required under Rule 9 of the Code to acquire the shares of Tottenham Hotspur not already held by ENIC. So, in a nutshell, what happens is, because of they are the majority owner, I think there's 13% of Tottenham Hotspur is still owned by about 30,000 minority shareholders. People like Lubo, for example, is a shareholder. So whatever would happen, if there was to be a bid that would come in between now and the 5th of October, we'll come to that, then all of the shares would have to be taken. It's a mandatory takeover. So as far as I understand that, the reality is that you'll no longer be a small minority shareholder in that environment. The board of the club and ENIC confirmed that Tottenham Hotspur is not for sale, and ENIC has no intention to accept any such offer to acquire its interest in the club. This is pretty standard. This is very, very standardized sort of nomenclature. It's not something that you're going to see very often when they say, yeah, the club is open, unless the price point and the conversations have been in open communications and the media speculation are in that way. Basic common sense, right? If there's people that said, hey, are you for sale? And they come out and say, yeah, we are interested in a sale, it just drives the price down and hands over the negotiation leverage. So I wouldn't read into it too much. It might be true, it might not be true that they are looking for a sale. Back in the day, though, if you remember, Daniel Levy did say that they are not interested in a full takeover. They are looking, however, to expand the equity base in order to find new funding, new sources of funding, so as to invest more in the football club or leave more of the money in the football club in Tottenham, and to be able to find the funding for the other things that are off the in the higher road with regards to the hotel and all those sorts of things. We've got Connor here as well. Big up to you, Connor. How are you, mate?
Hello, mate. I'm very well. How are you?
Not bad, mate. Not bad. Feeling a little bit delicate, but not as delicate as I was last Sunday after the Tottenham game when I met your mates. We went out wild. I won't talk about who they are, but those guys, they took me on a wild one. Compared to a wedding, you would have thought the wedding would have been more crazy, but it wasn't. Maybe I was just on better behavior. I'm not sure. Good to see you, mate. I'm trying to figure out how to do this in a way of my because of these overlays with the sponsor. I'm not quite up to date with getting them better fitted. I'll keep it like that and just finish the statement off. So, the board of the club and ENIC confirmed that Tottenham Hotspur is not for sale, and ENIC has no intention to accept any such offer to acquire its interest in the club. As I say, that's pretty standard, guys. In accordance with Rule 2.6 of the Code, each of PCP and consortium is separately required by not later than 5 p.m. on the 5th of October to either announce a firm intention to make an offer for the company or to announce that it does not intend to make an offer. So at some point in the next 28 days, we're going to know either way whether or not these two clubs have intentions to make an offer. Even if they do, it still doesn't have to be accepted. It can still be firmly rejected. And again, this has absolutely nothing to do. There's no timelines or any of this stuff. This is the takeover code, nothing to do with investment. So, and as I was saying just a second ago, when Daniel Levy said before, they're looking for investment. He did mention at the time they weren't looking for a full takeover. So, but the expressions of interest and the expressions of an offer have been made. In which case, their respective announcements will be treated as a statement to which Rule 2.8 of the Code applies. This deadline can be extended with the consent of the panel on takeovers and mergers in accordance with Rule 2.6. Accordingly, this announcement commences an offer period for the purposes of the Code. If you want more information, these are the people you speak to. Just for what it's worth, because the company still has minority shareholders, these things here are talking about disclosures requirements. Basically, that the people that are expressing an interest, if they had, in a world where this was on the stock exchange, on the AIM market, for example, and these people had already been going out buying up minority shares in various methods, then they would have to announce what their current holding is before they go ahead. As this is now essentially, for all intents and purposes, a private company with just legacy shareholders, then it's largely irrelevant. I won't bother with all the other details. Connor, what's your initial thoughts, my man?
Sorry, I froze for a second. Can you hear me? I'm going to assume you can.
Sorry, mate, you're right.
What's my initial thoughts? Sorry, I froze for a minute. I think no, it was funny. I did a podcast last night talking about what I think potentially will come in, and obviously at that stage we just knew about the Staveley piece before Tottenham have obviously made this fuller statement today, and I think I was speculating last night that the dots don't quite join up with all of this stuff at the moment, and I think I wouldn't read too much into the fact that Tottenham are saying they're not for sale, because obviously they're going to say that. This is very meaningful, and I think there is a very, very good chance that we're not being told the sort of full story. I think Levy moving on without even a non-executive role, and I think we spoke about this before. Sean Levy's moving on without, loses his £3 million salary, £3 million plus salary. He doesn't have anyone representing his interests on the board anymore, so he is a very sizable minority silent shareholder now, which I don't think particularly sort of is consistent with what you'd expect. And so for me, I think there's one of two things going on. I think they're either gearing up for a full sale or takeover, and we're not being told all the details yet. And these two, perhaps, that have expressed an interest are not meeting the relevant price point. Or my second theory, which I suspect now is more likely, I think they might be looking to sell Daniel Levy's share. And that might be by way of someone just investing directly into ENIC rather than into Tottenham, which then takes away the requirement under the takeover code, because obviously ENIC's based in the Bahamas, and so they could just take his percentage of ENIC. And that way they then get this sort of Jim Ratcliffe style model whereby they get someone else who can actually front up some cash, because obviously we know whenever ENIC were pumping in cash, that had to come from Daddy Joe Lewis rather than from Daniel himself. So Daniel got to benefit from the upside, but didn't actually front the cash himself. So they get someone else to front up that cash piece, take away noise from them, but then them as the Lewis family still get to benefit from the upside themselves as well. And so, I could definitely see that being the way that they go. Now, the problem with that approach, though, is it's obviously a lot harder to find someone that's willing to be a minority shareholder than someone, because most buyers at this sort of level are going to want full control, right? And they're going to want to, have complete say in terms of the way that things run. So maybe it'll be a phased approach, but it is difficult to find, I think, someone that would be willing. So that, if you argue Levy's bit is worth, say, 800 million, £1 billion, that's a very sizable investment to make to only have a 25% effective say in Tottenham's running.
Unless there was the intentions for a future phase, right?
Unless it's that, exactly.
Similar with like the Sir Jim Ratcliffe thing. The thing I've got to say, because we are going to come to who these people are in a second, I've got loads of information or what I could find, and believe it or not, with a couple of them, it's very difficult. But so there's a guy that Johnny and I know who's very much involved with certain. I won't sort of give anything about away, but he knows lots and lots of things that happen around the training ground, and he sort of leans into the conversations that he has, and he sort of puts a lot of the he dampens down a lot of my conspiracy theory outcomes regarding, what's going on with regards to the chronology, like the chronology of how these things have come about, especially in the last couple of months. Because if I hadn't, I'll take what he says on board, and I definitely lean into the fact that he knows certainly what he, more than I do in terms of those sorts of things. But the outcome that has been suggested more recently of things like the Times guy saying that Daniel Levy wasn't aware of the sort of stepping down until a few hours before the announcement. On paper, and I know Paul O'Keefe came out and said that's absolute nonsense. Of course it is. And on paper, I think it makes sense that it's nonsense. Of course it would be, right? Like they're too close. The families are very, like they're kind of, his son, Daniel Levy's son, is on the Tavistock, or at least used to be the CEO of Tavistock, the overarching owner. And so you'd think that there would be a lot of continuity in the relationship and no problems there. And I would imagine that's still the case. However, if you're looking at all of the different things that have happened in recent months, if you lean into what the Times has said, that there is some sort of truth to that, that would make an easier story out of the other bits of the information that don't make sense if there's no issues. Like the idea that, so January the NDAs were signed. First of all, December there was the share issue. January there were the NDAs. March, Charrington comes in initially as a non-exec director, not on the board initially. In April, Vinay comes in. In May, Cullens got rid of. In June, Vinny and Levy put their first visual representation out where they say that they're essentially in lockstep with each other. And whilst Vinny's doing the football side, there's not going to be any decisions that go one way unless both of them are in entire agreement. Then in July, you had the Neville interview where he's still saying, I'm still very much involved in everything. If all of that is either a smokescreen and a load of lies, that's fair enough, right? If there was always this intention to move for him to step down. But then you've got the Levy gone announcement. And obviously now you've got these bids that have come in and been rejected so far. To me, if there's truth that Daniel Levy didn't know, you could make the story make sense that all of the other things that were happening legitimately and with sincerity, that Vinay did come in and Levy was initially sort of said, oh, listen, nothing's going to change. He's just going to be the CEO. Don't worry about Charrington. He's just a fly on the wall. He's here to oversee as an advisor. Nothing to see here, Daniel. You're still CEO. You're still chairman, all that sort of thing. But then bit by bit, Donna Cullen, his right-hand woman, gets sort of maybe like expedited. It was a delayed stepping down from the board, but then, a little bit of a succession stuff going on. Then for Vinay to come in, vote for Charrington to come onto the board initially as the non-exec director. Then he becomes the non-exec chairman with voting rights. Like those things do tell a tale of Daniel Levy being sort of sandbagged a little bit. And then when you hear like the notion that the Cullens, who was it? The journalist that, thank you, the journalist that said that the Cullen children think that, they want the same outcomes as what Tottenham fans want, i.e. more success more frequently, that Daniel Levy was cop-blocking potential investments. If that was the case, then how does that stack up with that particular announcement that's just come out saying these two are the only two expressions of interest? Otherwise, we would have had to bring those things to your attention previously. And then it just feels to me like Daniel Levy's sort of been thrown under the bus a little bit, and that the Cullens are now coming back in. The Lewises are coming back in now saying, don't worry, we want what you want. And now there's also rumours that £100 million going to be added to the transfer budget in January. Connor, like £100 million is hardly the demonstration of ambition. And as what you said last time we spoke last week, if the Lewises are sitting there going, we wanted to do more, but it was Daniel Levy that was putting the brakes on, and that's what we're led to believe. Daniel Levy isn't independently wealthy enough to be able to do that sort of thing at football club levels, right? But the Lewis family are. So to me, I just feel like it all leads down this path, like that story leads down this path of like that Daniel Levy's being the fool guy for what has been like the PR of an unambitious football club. But actually the people that are now back in charge are trying to kind of masquerade as though, don't worry, we've got the reins back. We're going to be taking us to the next level. And by the way, here's £100 million. How do you like them apples? When most of us are sitting there going, that doesn't do anything, right? The Tottenham have taken more money out of the football club to buy property than that in the last 3 years anyway. So I just feel like it's a little bit of a smokescreen. And even though the people that obviously like I'm talking about that know more than I do behind the scenes, they're telling me nothing to see here, Sean. They're very much all very close, and it's all a family unit, a double family unit. And that's probably the case. But if you wanted to make a conspiracy, you could.
You could. And I think the media has fallen into that trap, I have to say. I think Daniel is many things, right? But stupid he is not. And, I think just play through how that would have played out, right? If it was the conspiracy way of things, right? So the Lewis family go to him and they go, oh, we're going to put Peter Charrington on the board, who by the way, Daniel, because obviously, Peter Charrington has been linked with Enoch for a number of years. Obviously, he's a very close friend. Levy will know Charrington really well, right? There's no odds about that. we're going to put him on the board. You've run the football club for all of these years, but we're just putting this guy on the board with none of your say whatsoever. This is slightly odd. Then the next one, and also we've picked a new CEO who you haven't been able to interview.
Yeah.
He's going to suddenly go, well, look, something's happening here. So this is
Right.
why I don't buy it, and I think he's known for some time that he's moving on in some guys. The other
So
point,
then,
which I think is
why all the releases, like the videos that were suggesting the opposite, that he's still in charge, that nothing's going to change?
why
Is that
wouldn't you?
is that just for the purposes of how it looks rather than how
Keeping
it's
it
happened?
in the same way they say the club's not for sale, and it might be for sale. It's just it's a PR exercise. I think perhaps they didn't want Vinay to do an interview on his own because they didn't want people to say, why is he doing an interview on his own? And fuel speculation. And perhaps they were trying to keep a lid on speculation. I mean, the other thing I'd say,
True. Good point.
is there's a really key point around Levy's effective ownership of Tottenham. So Levy and his trust arrangement, which is him plus his family, they own greater than 25% of Tottenham when you work it through the numbers. That's a key number because actually, as soon as someone owns more than 25%, it's really difficult to force them to sell their shares because you don't have the benefit of being able to pass a special resolution, for example, to effectively force them to sell their shares. So for me, it's in no one's interest if they've pushed Levy out in this sort of succession type arrangement, and basically got him to pack his things on the day and move out, because what that then could mean, to the extent that they do look to make any sort of future sale or realise any exit, he could make life difficult, right? And you just don't want that. And so for me, I think this is all being covered up, and I take a lot of the reporting with a pinch of salt, as we said last time when we chatted, because no one knew anything, and then as soon as the day it drops, they suddenly know all this in-depth detail about reviews that have taken place, and then they're all reporting the exact same thing, and it's like, come on, guys, I don't, and there's a lot of inconsistencies and things. I mean, the BBC can't even get the ownership percentages right when they're reporting on this stuff. So I take a pinch of salt of the stuff that I actually know, but I think there's a very good chance he's known for some time. It wouldn't shock me if they've even had the conversation. You think, I always bring this stuff down to personal motivations. And you think for him himself as well, maybe he's just thought, I'm 64. There's a lot going on politically in Britain. Do I want to go down the path that
Taxes
a
going
lot of
through the
other
roof.
wealthy individuals have gone through?
Yeah. Good point.
My daughter's in university in the States. Josh is heavily involved in Tavistock. I think he spends most of his time in Florida now. So you could see this sort of. He might have thought,
and he won. He got the trophy. He got the trophy, right? And it's the final kind of the cherry on top of a 25-year thing. Do you want to be part of the next project, similar to the rest of them? Listen, I don't disagree with anything you're just saying. 100%, I don't disagree. I would just the only part where I would think that there's a little bit of if you're paying attention, it's one thing for the media to speculate wildly and get it wrong. And that's in all likelihood what happened with the Times guy. It's in all likelihood what happened with the guy who said that the source is close to the Lewis family. 100%, there's a lot of people because they need to be first. They need to put out relevant content, get the clicks. I get it. I get all the motivations for that. What I would say is I just think that if you're paying attention to the official documented releases from the football club, the things that have been approved, then the two things that you can really lean into are the Gary Neville interview and the announcement with regards Vinay and Daniel Levy. And for all intents and purposes, like the idea that Daniel Levy is saying, nothing changes at this club, there's no decision that's going to happen unless I'm a part of it. 3 months ago, like there's a danger. Even though I hear your point that it could just be about continuity of the message, all that stuff, but for 3 months later, for that whole thing to be unwound entirely, it leaves a lot of room for speculation as to the motivation to deceive, right? And so, like, you're not going to be trusted with the next thing that you come out and say if it was always known for years that he was stepping down, and that only 90 days ago we were told that Vinay's taken over, but nothing's going to change primarily, unless Daniel Levy and Vinay are on board the same page. Like that doesn't make sense to me for them to say that and then for this announcement to come so soon afterwards. The other motivation is we don't know when these expressions of interest actually occurred, right? So if those things took place in between June the 3rd or whenever when that video came out and last week, then those things may have been a precursor, or sorry, that this announcement might have been a precursor in line with any potential offer that does come, which if that is the case, and again, we're speculating here, then you lead to believe that whilst the club is officially not for sale, of course they're going to come out and say that, because saying the opposite would mean that there'd be less leverage in the negotiation, right? So we'll find out in the next 28 days whether or not, you know, an intention to make a bid comes through. But either way, like if the story is sincere, and that Daniel Levy has known about this as long as everybody else, and the intentions were kind of in play from, say the start of 2025, and that Charrington was just like the second or third cog in that position, then Vinay was the fourth, etc. But everything else was on board. If that is the case, then the story doesn't make a lot of sense. Like the individual things that have come along in the timeline, and it kind of leads you to believe in the future that like people have been asking for more communication. For Vinay's first communication to the football club to be part of a lie, seems like that's not the best way to ingratiate yourself with people that want to look back and trust what you say in the future.
Yeah, I suppose you sort of touched on it. There could have been, this was their end goal, exit plan was to first let Levy go, and they knew that at the time of the interview, but perhaps things have accelerated, to your point, in those 3 months. And hence why he's ended up going, maybe in their head they thought that, well, in June, he might be going at the end of December, for example, or into next year. And then suddenly, actually, these conversations have accelerated in such a way that it makes sense for him to go quicker. I mean, these statements, you can't, when you read the statement like the one you showed earlier, the one on the Tottenham site, you can't read too much into it, because a lot of it is really standard wording, right? And it's lawyered up to, and it's pro forma. Like, because for example, I think someone in the chat that we're in made the point that it talks about in relation to proposals to acquire the entire issued and to be issued share capital of ENIC, which made them think, oh, does that mean that there is definitely a capital injection coming? That's just really standard wording that you have on these types of things. So I don't think you can read into that too much. And similarly, I read that sentence, they say, the board of the club and ENIC confirm that Tottenham Hotspur is not for sale, and ENIC has no intention to accept any such offer to acquire its interest in the club.
Yep.
Now, what that doesn't say is that they're not interested in selling a percentage, or, it says that ENIC are not going to sell their interest and the club's not for sale, but it doesn't dispute that, the theory around Levy potentially selling his interest in ENIC and someone coming in via that way. So, and maybe they just wouldn't say that because they don't need to, but, they haven't specifically denied it.
There's nothing stopping. So I did some research into, other mechanisms, right? Because we'll talk about in a second these particular two parties. One of them specifically, Amanda Staveley. If any of the rumours are true, that is part of the Qatar, the household, that whether it's all indirect or otherwise. There was also the rumours a couple of weeks ago with regards to the stadium naming rights that it might be NEOM or it might be Saudi Ramco. Either way, both of those companies are primarily owned by the PIF or by the Saudi royal family, so they'd have to figure out loopholes to get around that, which become problematic. Now, one of the things that I've spoken with you about and with Johnny about is obviously that ENIC is just one of several companies in the Tavistock umbrella, and one of the ways that you can sort of have a standard deviation to get away from the rumours or get away from the problems of any conflicts of interest with regards to the PIF fund already owning Newcastle is essentially to take on the same banner, the same vein as what Chelsea did, right? So like Chelsea, obviously, they're half owned by Clearlake, or majority owned by Clearlake Capital, and then the other part is Bluecoat. But Clearlake Capital is its own fund, its own PE situation that has dozens of investors as well. Now I know that Clearlake's the people that the PIF fund that are one of the majority owners in Clearlake were already before they took over Newcastle, but just because it's the cart before the horse, it doesn't mean that they're not on the same track. And so the fact of the matter is that Newcastle's takeover from the PIF fund was deemed legal, despite the fact that the PIF fund have got vested interests in Clear Lake Capital that already own a football club or half own a football club. So you could see, or you could potentially, on paper, see a scenario where one of these investors could come in at a higher level into the ENIC situation and go in via Tavistock. The problem with that is that Tavistock is entirely privately owned, it's entirely family run, and that they don't have any, they never have had, according to any accounts that you can find on the company, any other investors that come in directly into Tavistock. So it's 100% wholly owned by the Lewis family and their kind of counterparty. So it would be very difficult to see a third party coming in to buy a slice of Tavistock, but you could obviously just sell part of your shares in ENIC that don't necessarily therefore have to reflect the shares in Tottenham Hotspur specifically. So it's, again, a standard deviation away from the natural ownership model that would then, be privy to all of those different checks and balances in the new in the whether the owner passes the fit and proper test.
Yeah, and I think you just made quite a poignant point in terms of the distinction between a Tavistock and a Clear Lake. I mean, Clear Lake's business is, they create funds, go out and get institutional investors to invest into those funds, and then use that money to go and invest into companies. So PIF coming into one of their funds is very normal. They've probably got, everyone's pension in the chat have probably got an investment in those type of funds, and you'll have a BlackRock will be in there, and you'll have the Norwegian sovereign wealth fund, whereas Tavistock's model actually has been to invest effectively Lewis family money into things, so they don't actually get investment from external investors, as I understand it, and so that is
I think they still get certain specific financial leverage loans, but via their family wealth sort of thing. So
exactly. So it's not your sort of traditional private equity type fund or house that we see now. It's almost more like a family office type arrangement. So it is different. But yeah, I mean, look, these people can make it work if they want to make it work, right? I think obviously a lot is rooted through PIF in Saudi Arabia, but there's a huge amount of individual and family wealth as well that could quite easily be, managed that way if that was who we were potentially interested in. I mean, on the stadium naming rights, it's interesting because I have to say I don't see. I think me and you might have discussed this before, but I don't see why Saudi Aramco would want to sponsor Tottenham Stadium. I don't see what, I get it if it's Saudi Air because it's a consumer business, right? But you can't go and buy oil or petrol from Saudi Aramco, right? So I don't get what they would get out of, and there's still, these rumors are still circling, but I just don't get, for that type of business that sells obviously oil directly to,
Texaco
BPs and Shells of the world.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
What would they get from sponsoring a consumer-facing business?
Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of
Saudi
sense.
Air, I absolutely understand, obviously, because
Yeah, normally, like the like, just for the easy way for people to understand, if you are listening and interested in this, like stadium naming rights deals, especially if you are a global brand with global footprint, then the obvious value base would be for a global brand that has B2C, as in business to consumer relationships. So the Googles of this world that are everywhere, or most places, maybe not China, but most places where there's that brand value because the access to the brand awareness. But things like pharmaceutical companies generally wouldn't work because in the UK, pharmaceutical advertising is banned, right? And the majority of the people that go to the stadium, it might work if you're thinking bigger than that, but investment funds, not really massive, right? Not big enough to make any sense. Like the car leasing, when we went to Reading, the select car leasing arena, right? That's very, very hyper local, obviously, to that particular area. And it makes a little bit of sense. But, when you're Tottenham Hotspur and you're putting on Beyonce tickets and you're on NFL games and all that stuff, you've got to think about global companies. And so, yeah, you just got to think about anything where you're aware of, like an Amazon, that would make sense. But Saudi Aramco, they don't deal with, I don't even think in Saudi Arabia, their petrol stations are Saudi Aramco. I think they're something else. So like they're very much a B2B business. So the only way it makes any sense logically would be as a demonstration of goodwill. to get themselves into the club with future ambitions in the future. But generally speaking, 400 million quid or whatever we're thinking about here is a lot of money to make as a gesture of goodwill to get their foot through the door, unless there's some direct overlap into the value proposition. And from a B2B business, there really isn't any. Same sort of reason as why Tavistock wouldn't sponsor, or any of their property companies wouldn't sponsor the stadium. Doesn't make any sense to them. And that's probably why Tottenham Hotspur have kept it, the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, for so long, because there's that indirect benefit of like legacy, customer value over the years, with people that are familiar with Tottenham Hotspur who might not have otherwise been, by stumbling across them when they've gone to the Formula One or to Beyonce, or to be seen on those NFL games and all those sorts of things. So it doesn't make any sense.
And I suppose by not selling the naming rights, it gives you a tool for a future sale of the club, right? Because you don't want to, for example, if they are looking actively to get investment or hopefully do a full sale, I think if they'd had an arrangement with Google for 20 years, that diminishes some value for that potential new buyer, particularly if it's Middle Eastern money, right? Who then would look to put an airline name on it or whatever, and that's a way of increasing some of the revenue. So yeah, it's I personally can't see Aramco, but I could see. Well, other than the fact that they've already sponsored Atletico Madrid's stadium, Saudi
Neon.
Air could have been one that you
Saudi
could have.
Air.
Yeah.
Is it Riyadh Air? Isn't it? Is it Riyadh Air?
Riyadh Air, sorry, Riyadh Air.
Yeah.
Yeah, Riyadh Air. You could have seen that potentially, particularly as you've already got Etihad and Emirates here. There's some logic, isn't there, to that making.
Is there any concerns though with regards? I'm pretty sure I'm not sure if it was Johnny or Lubo. Someone told me, and I haven't verified it, but that the part of the deal to get hold of the stadium being used for the next European Championships, I think it is, that you can't have a stadium that has a sponsorship, and then it needs a hotel, and it needs to not have a naming rights deal, and so that's what ruled out certain stadiums. And again, though, I'm sure you could just bake into the contract that it's known as the the Neom Stadium or whatever else for the Premier League games, but then when it goes to the championships, it becomes just the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium again. Have you seen that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that's right, because I think Etihad's been picked, and I think Principality is the Cardiff one now, isn't it? And
right, okay.
So they're all
that makes sense.
Named, aren't they? So, yeah. I think that point is not right.
Oh well, look. I mean, let's take a quick look see then at some of these people, right? So the first, I'm not going to bring all this stuff up because there's thousands of them, but let's talk about this fella Wing Fi NG. I'm not sure if NG is like Nguyen. I think that's quite a common Chinese name, or whether NG stands for something else. So he is he's Hong Kong-based financier and entrepreneur. He's the co-leader of the Firehawks Holdings Consortium alongside this geezer, Dr. Roger Kennedy. Now, what's interesting, Connor, is I could find a picture of Wing Fi. I can't find a picture of Roger Kennedy anywhere, even on Trilla's website or on the CNBC listing of Trilla. So, I mean, he's very difficult to find any kind of pictures of. But these two apparently bring extensive experience in private equity, cross-border investments, particularly in Asia and in the US. NG is known for founding and leading multiple investment firms and holding senior roles in global financial institutions. So I'm going to look at his career highlights, right? So he is group president and executive director at Convoy Global, which is a Hong Kong listed investment holding company focused on financial services and real estate. So there's definitely some overlap into the real estate game there, which makes sense. And don't forget also that probably is maybe part of the relationship with that lady. What was her name? Remember her name? Kim something? Catalina Kim, that was it, yeah. So I think she's got some background in a couple of these companies as well. So that might be another little telltale sign that her hire suggests that there's more to this than meets the eye. He's also the chief executive officer and executive director at Trilla Group, which is NASDAQ-listed social media and entertainment company. He's the managing director at Fubon Group, which is a financial conglomerate out of Taiwan. He's the director at EonCap Islamic Bank, based in Malaysia. He's the director at Tag Asia Capital, which is a British Virgin Islands-based investment vehicle for Asia Pacific opportunities. And he's also the managing partner of Primus Pacific Partners, who are also based in Hong Kong, and they're a PE firm specializing in mid-market investments. So it was from Primus that he initially got introduced to the Triller Group. Mid-market, obviously just being in the UK, for example, the FTSE 250, companies that generally range from about $1 billion to about $3 billion in valuation. And also mid-market can also mean where they are in their own sort of life cycle before they get to IPO as well, depending on the specifics, but can't find the specifics with regards to those particular investments. He was also previously managing director at Solomon Smith Barney, who's part of Citigroup now. They're a major investment bank. He used to deal with them all the time. And he's also a consultant at Booz Allen Hamilton, who are a major consulting firm. And they are linked, by the way, to the company that was allegedly employed by Tottenham to do the consulting overview about a year ago to find out where and how their method was to like their sort of future trajectory was determined. So quite a lot of sort of just weird, kind of maybe somewhat incidental, but also you could connect the dots a little bit to say that there's some of the things that Tottenham have got themselves involved with recently and in the not too distant past have overlaps into this particular geezer. But the other fella, Dr. Roger Cameron, what's his name again? Dr. Roger Cameron Kennedy. So he's portrayed as a key figure in orchestrating the consortium's approach to ENIC, but there's no information about his personal net worth, his education, or other ventures are detailed in any of the reports that have been linked to the Tottenham story. He is, of course, also, though, on the board of Triller. Let's just start there because there's so much we can go through here. I don't want to bore everybody to pieces, but Triller, right? Sort of little bro of TikTok, little bro of DAZN, that used to be the competitor to Musical.ly and TikTok, and then obviously went off in their own direction, and now they're the little bro of DAZN in terms of random sports. Just I've got their website here. I'll just show everyone for a moment. If you're unfamiliar with who Triller are, they do a lot of like bare knuckle fighting, a lot of sort of random sports, wrestling, like kind of random offshoots of wrestling. Basically, like they go and capture all of the live streaming events of little bros to bigger companies that have bigger broadcasting rights. Do you think, if there's any truth to this particular side of the investment story, do you think that the Triller side has any connection at all towards this notion around in the future trying to capture Premier League streaming rights and things like that?
I doubt that. I don't think they're big enough. But I think there might be something in just this lot wanting to have some sort of experience in sports entertainment, and therefore there's that sort of natural extension, I suppose, to a Premier League football club. I mean, I was subscribed to Triller at one point. I can't remember why, but there was a very random boxing fight I wanted to watch on there, so I've come across them.
Yeah. And then about 18 months later, you check your bank balance and they've been taking 40 quid a month off you.
Bloody cancelled it. Yeah. But yeah, so
I've been there as well, mate.
Yeah, not just for that type of website.
No, 100%, 100%. The other ones are even more outrageous. What they do every couple of weeks, they just assume, Anyway, carry on.
But yeah, I mean, you look, they've got a whole host of shit on there now, haven't they? I mean, yeah, it's sort of not particularly big time, but
not particularly. Apparently, their revenue last year was like 50 million quid or something. So like I
mean, so that's
it's tiny, isn't it? In
the grand scheme of things, that's pretty bad. So yeah, I mean, look, I think it's interesting. For me, when I saw this one, my mind immediately went to these feel a bit small time, was my instant gut reaction. But then what we don't know is who's sitting behind this consortium, right? And who are and obviously Wing Fai in particular, who you just read out his experience and what he's been involved in. He will know money people, right? And I think what we understand from it is some sort of Chinese consortium sitting behind these two as the face, and obviously these are the face because they have those executive facing roles probably, and then you've got, so we don't know who's sitting behind it.
Yeah.
But of it, because clearly these two wouldn't be able to get the money from their own personal wealth. They're nowhere near in that stratosphere.
Well,
So
I've got a couple of more. So I looked into that just on because I thought you would ask that sort of question. So Triller Group specifically, like the other companies that we mentioned, like Tag Holdings, for example, that he's a board director of, they also own 17% of Triller, right? So, and there's another one here, KCP Holdings, that has an undisclosed but a significant institutional holding. They led the $50 million funding round for Triller. KCP Holdings are apparently also minority investors in some of the companies or some of the overall ownership of the franchises within the NFL. Again, I'm just putting it out there as like incidental information. I've got no idea whether or not there's any like overlap here, but I'm trying to figure out the kind of relationship to regard, like, if you're going to go down the Western money or the Eastern money, but that comes with Western footprint, which is what these guys do, right? So these guys obviously, I think one of them was it Harvard? I forget. Like one of the major universities. They're alumni for like loads and loads of different banks that have footprints in the American PE market as well. And Triller Group, so most of it, retail investors own 55%, private companies own 27%. Tag Holdings is one of, it's the largest single shareholder, and this is the company that this geezer is also a part of. There's another guy called Ming Sing Tsai, who's a Taiwanese American investor involved in tech and entertainment sectors, and with a large slice towards sports, mainly out of Asia, but similar sort of thing. And so there's just a lot of the people that are involved in the Triller game seem to have connections to either American footprint PE firms or firms that also have a footprint in sports, right? So there's another. So in the pre-merger, again, I'm sorry if everyone this is really boring, but I just want to put it out there. There's a company called Pegasus Tech Ventures that gets involved in a VC arm of Japan's Pegasus, and Pegasus have got a lot of history working with American sports franchises as well. Proxima Media, another company that does the same sort of thing. So I just sorry, Connor, what was that, mate?
No, I didn't say anything. I was just.
Oh, sorry, I must have heard something on a loop. Just feel like there's a hell of a lot of people that are invested somewhat in the background that have overlaps into American VC, PE, and investment banking, and their specific leans are into tech and entertainment with sports as a primary push. And so I'm just wondering, we've been talking a hell of a lot recently about, like, the cost of that stadium was £100 million extra because they wanted the retractable pitch. Now that pitch is not just used for NFL; it's also used as the primary foundation of when they do the kind of the stadium stuff as well. The White Web's development, isn't that supposed to include a NFL training pitch? Is it that one or somewhere else that wherever Tottenham have bought to do that development, isn't part of that supposed to be used for a future NFL training pitch? All of those things. Like, if you're handing over, if there's any investment here and it's going towards people that are going to benefit from that, it's probably going to be not the Amanda Stabley side of this. Is probably going to be the other side, right? With the American PE and VC funding.
Yeah, and I think there was always, people suspected that there was a chance, American money might be the way that it. Not least because actually, generally, you're seeing a lot of American PE money come into Spawn. We discussed this last time, right? Not only looking at obviously who owns Chelsea, Liverpool, Arsenal, but also more generally, American private equity firms are massively ramping up in terms of financing in football. So Real Madrid and Barcelona stadiums fully financed effectively by money that's come from US investors, either via isn't private equity, it's debt, but it's the same firms.
Yeah.
Similarly, ours, right, in terms of the private placement bonds. And so that money is just flowing its way into football. There's been a huge growth in that. Apollo, who's one of the biggest investment firms in the world, have recently launched that news that they're hoping to come into football in a big way. So you're seeing that naturally. And then for us, there is that natural synergy with NFL, right? As you said. So yeah, it's interesting. I think the other thing that's quite interesting about this so far is on the Takeover panel's website for any losers like me that want to check that. So far,
I love that bit about you,
there's
mate.
only there's Staveley is not on there. There's nothing about Staveley's one. It's just Kennedy and Wingfire's Firehawk Holdings Limited is disclosed on there. So that either means that Staveley has definitely completely taken herself out of the process and her consortium that's behind her, or perhaps they've got an extension, or they haven't done it yet. But it was interesting that's not on there yet of these two preliminary inquiries.
Just want to ask you this about this. I don't know if you saw this article. And by the way, again, I understand someone said this is boring. David, mate, look, it's not this channel. Obviously, Connor and I both are in finance, or I used to be in finance in a lot more capacity than I am these days. But this is our kind of this is like porn to us. So we and we've got to talk about these things. So if it's not
the international break as well, mate. So it's either this or we're talking about gorillas fighting rhinos or something.
Yeah, but this stuff, I love this stuff, right? I absolutely love this stuff. So there was this big article. I spoke to my dad about this, right? And my dad obviously, retired investment banker as well. So he was saying to me, Sean, like, I wouldn't write off this notion when you're talking about like valuations of Tottenham Hotspur and you think that people are getting priced out. Some people are getting priced in. I was like, well, explain that. And he said, like, obviously, yeah, if you're valuing the company at 4 billion minus the debt, so it's 3 billion or whatever else. He goes, yeah, you're going to find a lot of people that don't have that money that are obviously going to be filtered out. But you're going to look at the valuation and compare it to other industries and look at the things that are going on in those industries and think about the difference between, for example, NFL. And he sent me this article, right? This came out a couple of days ago. And obviously with all the NFL, the stadium, the fact that there's going to be more international games in NFL than ever before this year. I think it's 8 this season. I think they're going to Brazil. I think they've got obviously a lot in London. But if you look at this, right? So the number one valued franchise is 12.5 billion, which is Dallas Cowboys. And they've got a revenue of 1.27 billion. And they're massive earnings. They don't have a lot of debt. Jerry Jones is the owner, obviously. Like they've been around for a long time and they figured all that stuff out. But you go all the way down to number 32. Arizona Cardinals is valued at more than Tottenham Hotspur is by about 20%. And this is in dollars, right? So if Tottenham were valued at say $4.5 billion, just for or $4 billion, whatever, just for argument's sake, the smallest of the 32 NFL teams, and they have revenue that is far less than Tottenham Hotspurs. Right, so if we're working, if Tottenham are going to break 600 million quid this year, Connor, in revenue, then let's just call it 620, whatever. That's about 500. That's about $700 million, something around that mark, right? So from about somewhere here down, Tottenham Hotspur's revenues this season will be somewhere around mid-spot in the NFL franchise valuation in terms of revenue. And all of these valuations dwarf Tottenham Hotspur by about 40 to 50%. And this is for a sport that's only really played in America. And it might be a global sport, but it's nowhere near as big, nowhere near as many eyeballs are watching the average NFL game day 7 Baltimore Ravens against Tennessee Titans game as a watching United against Liverpool or whatever else, right? So,
yeah, I looked at this. Sorry, go finish it.
No. Sorry, I was going to say to me, the opportunity is there for people that see the bigger picture. They're not wondering about how do I get my money out in 12 months, but they're wondering about where's the opportunity to grow the revenues. And if you could turn Tottenham into a Goliath, and you have that sort of launch pad of, Tottenham Hotspur winning the Europa League. Right, Tottenham Hotspur being the stadium, it's a beautiful thing. All of the potential for the property around it, and then on top of that, if you were to do what Todd Boehly did to a degree, where you invest that money, for them it's still chump change, because look at the difference in what Tottenham Hotspur could be to what a mature Minnesota Vikings is at less than $7 billion. It doesn't take a kind of stretch to think if you have a 10-year horizon, then an NFL franchise in London, etc., all part of that same the overall access to that club. To me, it makes a lot more sense to think that actually the interested party should be looking at these things as much as they are just at Tottenham Hotspur as a sleeping giant.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I looked at this point when I did that valuation thread on Tottenham, and I think NFL franchises have always gone at a premium compared to football clubs. One of the reasons is because they can't get relegated, so you don't have that risk of the club being relegated, and obviously just the sort of mechanics of the sport are slightly different. So I think there is that premium naturally of a more sort of defined list of clubs compared to football, where you can have up and comers, and therefore they get the same argument happens with football in that when you look at what Big Six clubs go for compared to non-Big Six Premier League clubs in terms of the multiple for revenue, it's higher because the jeopardy.
There's no jeopardy in relegation with Tottenham Hotspur, though, is there?
No, there isn't. Exactly.
In reality, it'd be very difficult to see, someone go down.
Why the premium on our revenue or on our EBITDA, if you were valuing Tottenham, would be higher than on a Crystal Palace or a Fulham or whatever, just because of that risk. There is also to say, I think there is, and this is why something like European Super League, for example, if that ever comes back on the table, you could suddenly see this big jump and spike up in terms of valuations, because then that's more akin to what we see in the NFL, right? So, I think
how many teams in the Premier League are owned by Americans now? It's more than half, right?
Yeah, must be.
And what is it like? How much does the game day pass cost? I mean, someone who's American might be able to help me out here, but I'm sure the game day part, you can get an NFL game day pass where you can watch every game, right? And you can sidestep the kind of the Saturday 3:00 kickoff thing. They haven't got that in America. Of course they wouldn't, but in the UK, I mean, that's still just an old archaic thing, but it still exists. At the next round, I mean, Simon Jordan spoke about this, 2 years ago, and was saying that essentially for £10 a month, you could get access to every single one of your teams, live stream, live streamed games. And that in and of itself, if you were just to do a usual multiplier on the amount of people that would be interested, that would quadruple the amount of money that you get from broadcast revenue just on the Premier League, let alone European games and all that other stuff, right? So to me, if you're thinking about it, I guess where I'm going with the whole kind of American thing there, Connor, is Tottenham are set up to be an NFL franchise when that day comes. But if you're an American investor, and it looks like, for all intents and purposes, this Roger Kennedy and Wing, Phi, and G, that they're, even though they might be Asian, historically, but they obviously have a lot of footprint in America. And we talk about little cartels that emerge in football, right? Like the Saudi Arabian money, like Newcastle, Chelsea, Villa, like North African descent, but they're involved in that whole sort of thing. Manchester City, they're kind of doing a lot of back scratching with each other. You could feasibly see as well the same thing happening with American investors that are investing in the various clubs, like the Bill Foleys and the Crystal Palace, etc. All those guys getting together as well, and then you want to be a part of it. You don't want to be the black sheep in the Premier League meetings. And Daniel Levy has sort of presented himself in that regard, hasn't he? Being the poster boy of FFP, and that like the recent Premier League meetings, essentially not even getting a vote on on cancelling the ability to sell your left arm to your right arm and loan it back. All of that stuff, like maybe Daniel Levy's departure, whether it was convivial or otherwise, was necessary to be able to represent Tottenham Hotspur as a football club that's got doors that open rather than doors that are shut.
Yeah, and I think the danger is, to be fair, for us as football fans, this is where the risk of things like a Premier League game being played abroad and all of those, because and I'm someone who's been very critical of ENIC and Levy, as you know, and that ownership model, but that the Americans that come in to buy these football clubs, they don't necessarily understand. The Premier League is a bit alien to them, and the sort of traditional supporting of Premier League teams and season ticket holders and all of that type of stuff is a bit alien as a concept, isn't it? And so there is this danger, to be fair, if we're another club that goes down that route, and as you say, it becomes it's becoming more and more prevalent that they then move away from what makes football so great as we see it as football fans, but to your point, there is part of you that, it's maybe that is just the way it's going, unfortunately, and you sort of need to jump on the train, right? And but yeah, it's going to be interesting. But on your point in terms of future growth, I think we've discussed this before. We got a huge amount of potential future growth for someone that buys us because of the fact that we're at that sort of 500, 600 million mark without actually being consistently successful and consistently getting in the Champions League. And so there is absolutely a world where you could see, even without the natural growth in terms of revenue in football, that we could be consistently at 650, 700 million in terms of revenue. So you've then your 130 million pound of revenue extra each year. You multiply that out, in terms of valuation, and suddenly you've easily grown the club by $1 billion straight away through that, right? So, I think it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. The Club World Cup as well. You've got that now creating another huge revenue maker for clubs that qualify for it. So it doesn't show many signs of stopping at the moment, does it?
No, it doesn't. I guess the reason I'm sort of trying to kind of like overlap all these things here is like my sort of research this morning was looking into essentially like if we're just going to look at Triller as the visual representation of what this guy sort of knows about in something similar to our world, something in the slightest bit similar, then you're probably going to sit there and think, yeah, it's a little bro of bigger companies. They haven't got much revenue. They're just kind of feeding off the bottom feeding off of whatever sports are maybe popular but could grow, like bare knuckle fighting, that sort of stuff. But actually, when you look into it, some of the people that they've got on their board, some of the people that have been in the pre-IPO stage, those fundings, these companies do have lots of overlap into sports. And so maybe, as you said correctly, Connor, maybe these two, what you can find about them, which isn't great or it isn't a lot, it doesn't give you that much confidence that they know exactly what they're doing. But like everything, sometimes the front men are just a visual representation, but the bigger picture is behind the scenes. And so I don't necessarily want to chalk them off, but of the two, and we're going to move now to Staveley and her group, of the two, if you're looking for the one that most closely resembles some sort of beneficiary of moving into American markets, bringing American money to try to get on board that side of the power struggle in the Premier League and future revenues, you can make an argument to think that there's going to be lots of people in America with PE money that could view Tottenham Hotspur as one of the last remaining pretty much secure from relegation, jeopardy-free access points. And even though 3.5, 4 billion, excluding debt, well, including debt, whatever, all of those things might sound expensive to many, to some that have got a bigger picture perspective and look at the comparables in the NFL and look in American sports franchises, is actually a sleeping giant, and they could double, treble their investment in the relatively near future. And so I don't think it's necessarily one we should write off, but maybe the second option here, Connor, is slightly more pertinent. And that is, of course, Amanda Staveley and her company, PIP, is it? PIP Capital. Let me get my notes up on here. Where are they? PCP Capital Assets, sorry. Where's PCP? Here we go. Yeah, so PCP International Finance. She's obviously alongside her husband, Murdad Gadusi, was instrumental in the 2021 Saudi-backed takeover of Newcastle. As you said, mate, it looks like she's sort of distancing herself a little bit from it now. They sold their shares in the summer of 2024 to focus on new opportunities. Her involvement in our bid aligns with the sort of the Manchester. She was involved, apparently advising in the Manchester City 2008 Abu Dhabi takeover as well. Her net worth is estimated to be £500 million, derived from her investment advisory firm PCP. And that is a related but distinct entity from PCP International Finance, which has facilitated deals worth billions in sectors like energy, real estate, and sports. She has no prior public investments in Tottenham, obviously, but her Newcastle experience positioned her as a credible bidder. There's very, very little else that you can find, mate, about who else is in that consortium. Obviously, suggestions it's Qatar and maybe Saudi, Middle Eastern people. Would you imagine, though, that if there's a world where these people are getting, like, if they are going to be getting involved, is the world of finance is so close knit and so small in a weird way that it's very likely that, as with the case of PIF investing in Clearlake, etc., it's very likely that the people that are financing that particular offer would also have investments in PE firms and all of the other things. And so it doesn't necessitate that if you go east, you're blocking out the west and the NFL thing, right?
No, I think that's definitely right. And I think I mean, just because of her experience, you anticipate that it's going to be Middle Eastern money that she is.
I still hear you. But
Yeah, no
I
worries.
keep talking. I've just got
Middle Eastern money that she's brokering for or facilitating. I mean, there is part of me that thinks, why does she really need to be involved? If they want to come in directly, you would think they would just be able to. But obviously, that was the case for Newcastle, albeit 3 years ago when PIF was still sort of establishing their interest in sports a little bit more. And also, I think it probably links back to some sports washing type stuff in terms of having someone like a Staveley as the face. Felt better or more natural, perhaps, than having Piff come in just directly. So I think that's potentially the case. But as you say, it does seem she's already distanced herself from that. Who knows? That might have been a price point, right? Might have been she was only interested in a full takeover, and ENIC are only interested in selling Levy's portion at the moment. There could have been a whole host of things at play. I think what
when you say she's distanced herself from Tottenham,
they've come out with a statement. Yeah, they've come out with a statement already, I believe.
What, today?
Yeah, or they said last night they were going to make it today, and I was just googling as we were talking. Apparently, 10 minutes ago, they've put a statement out, but I couldn't actually find a statement.
Okay, let me find it. PCP.
Let me find it. There was an article in the Evening Standard that they put a statement out now. Hence why they're probably not on the Takeover panel website, as I said in the disclosure.
Didn't see that. Interesting. Let's get it up. Let's have a look. Sorry, mate. I didn't see that. That's
all right.
So the BBC. Oh no, that's not it. Hang on, where is it? The board of Tottenham says its owner has unequivocally rejected. Yada yada yada. In a statement last. Oh, that's not it. Oh, here we go. In a short statement, PCP International Finance said that it did not intend to make an offer for Tottenham. Okay, now on Sunday, ENIC. Well, that's it then. The board of. Yeah, it actually hasn't. It just says in a short statement, PCP.
That's obviously not to say they might not come back in, right? There's nothing that potentially stops that. Although under the takeover code, you have 6 months where you can't unless you're specifically invited to, or there's a competing offer. But yeah, certainly right now it seems like that's.
Can't see it. Can't see it on their website either.
No,
interesting. They've walked away. Okay, so okay.
But what I would say,
they had to come out between now and the 5th of October, right, and say whether they intended to or not, and they're saying they don't intend to. So it just means then that there's no full takeover, but there might be an investment. Is that right?
Exactly. And I mean, look, Matt Law, our favourite journalist, came out and said something quite interesting, that apparently both of these expressions of interest have come out since Levy stepped down, which obviously was only the 4th of September, right? Last week, 4 days ago. I find that very, very hard to believe. Again, I have to say, that suddenly for something of this sort of magnitude, and for it to be advanced enough that the takeover panel deems that it's, worthy of an announcement.
So doesn't that play back into that hand then, Connor? Doesn't that suggest that if
I just think Matt Law's wrong, to be honest, which would be consistent with where he is.
Well, yeah, and he's been wrong about a hell of a lot. He has been wrong about but if he's not wrong, then doesn't that play back into the card that Daniel Levy was maybe blackballed a little bit here, sandbagged?
Yeah, maybe, but I just think it's very unlikely that in the space of 4 days, 2 of which were a weekend, you would engage enough that you would make the takeover panel view it worthy of a sort of disclosure, right? That's just too much to happen in 4 days' time. So I just don't buy that at all.
Okay, well, let me play a different play. Is there any particular chance then that story alongside the Times one, alongside who was it that said sources? The BBC said it. No, sorry, Sky News. So Sky News said it, that sources close to the Lewis family essentially want what Tottenham fans want. Time Sport said that Daniel Levy didn't know about it until hours before the announcement, and Matt Law of the Telegraph is saying that these offers of interest have come out since Daniel Levy stepped down. And I hear you, if it's all too quick and too random, even though all of the other things that don't make sense, if it's sincere, and what you're suggesting, what a lot of people are, that they're like, these families like that, and there's nothing to see here. If that's true, then the rest of it doesn't make sense. But if what the journalists are saying is not true, but they're saying it anyway, then couldn't that be some demonstration of using the media as a PR to kind of, again, make Daniel Levy out to be the bad guy? And so that if ENIC want to take over, then they're trying to make out like, the only reason we weren't more successful, like give ENIC a second chance because the bad guy's gone. Does that make sense?
Maybe. But as I said before, I can't see how it's in ENIC's benefit long term to paint Daniel Levy as the bad guy. Short term, you get that PR spin of perhaps, let's say they do want to suddenly be more involved. So short term, by throwing him under the bus, you get the benefit of people. I already see it, right? Because a lot of the Levy out lot were Levy out and weren't really understanding, the bigger picture of actually how much actually changes if you get rid of Levy. Because for me, it was always ENIC that was the bigger issue. And you're already seeing it, right? You only got to go onto Twitter and you see all the celebrations about Levy going, some of which I agree with, but I'm still holding reservations because I want to see what the next step is. So they get that short-term benefit, right, of throwing him under the bus. Most people, I think, can look through it and go, this is a bit hypocritical, you guys, considering you only decided to put in £5 million a year of your own money for 24 years.
Especially if that £100 million thing, the new £100 million story, even though that's not been substantiated, that's what's going around.
It's a drop in the ocean, isn't it?
It doesn't buy you anyone. They won't even get you Morgan Rogers, right?
No, and also obviously, as you quite rightly pointed out, they've spent more than that on property in the last 3 years, and they've still got a huge amount of work to do on the property. So, how does that marry up?
But do you know what? It's one of those things though. If Tottenham if Tottenham didn't have to take how much did you say they've taken out in the last? Is it 100? It was 90
125 million in 3 years and
125 in 3 years.
Something million in 2.
Yeah, so if that 100 million is coming back into the club, you're just replacing the money that was taken out anyway. Not even all of it. No. But it still doesn't move the needle. You're still the football club is then still self-sustaining. But the other shit is financed elsewhere. It doesn't make any sense, mate. And that's why I feel like as much as I like to speculate and things, and I love the fact we can do that together. To me, these stories don't add up, and I feel like it's for me personally, and I know people who know more than I do tell me that what I'm saying isn't true. But if you're just going to look at it as the way that the story is unfolded, it looks to me like there's an attempt to whitewash ENIC's involvement in the lack of ambition, and then to sort of somehow use the media to portray it in a certain way. And by the way, I'm 100% behind the idea that Daniel Levy might have ruined relationships with other football clubs for trading purposes and players, and I can concede that 100%. But the notion that Daniel Levy was the cock block when 25 years of ENIC, they've got the money and they didn't put it in, and now they're saying he's gone, don't worry, the witch is dead, it's fine, we're back, don't worry, the kids have got you, here's 100 million quid, how'd you like them apples? And to me, I'm like, what are we doing here? And it's like intelligent people that can't read the room. You know what I mean?
By the way, if that is the case, and it's a plausible theory, right, that is the case, I doubt it just because of the way that these things typically work. And as I say, I don't think it's in anyone's benefit for it to be that way. But if it is that way, that's a pretty bad outcome for all of us, I think, actually, of all of this. And I think that really tempers certainly my excitement and probably other people's excitement of, the next step. Because to me, until I see some hard evidence of it, I'm very sceptical that ENIC leopard has changed its spots.
100%.
Whether it's the kids or the dad or whatever. I mean, the kids are not kids for a start. They're in their 60s and they've been, put through that exact same ringer as the Levy, as the Joe Lewis and the Tavistock way of operating. Plus, the trust arrangement's been in place since 2022, so there is an argument to say they could have done something sooner. So yeah, I'm very sceptical of it. The other thing is the only hard evidence I've got of any sort of change right now, other than Levy going and arguably the transfer window, we've profiled a different type of player in terms of wages and upskilled who we brought in, but they haven't necessarily spent particularly any different to how they have for the last 3 or 4 windows in terms of net spend. So that transfer spend piece hasn't really changed particularly. What I can see is that they've just taken out another loan facility, which is secured against Premier League revenues for this year. So to me, that contradicts that they're going to pump in a whole host of money, unless it's a short-term thing until you're waiting for an investment to come in again. So this is where it's, as you say, there's so many dots that don't join up.
Yeah,
and
it's the way I feel about the Levy out kind of narrative, right? Like, when I sort of say, I don't care if you're Levy out, show me your workings. And then people jump around and just remind you of all the negatives, but none of the positives, and then land on this idea that he's the devil. I feel like this story doesn't make any sense. None of it makes any sense. I'll try my best to think outside the box and try my best to, I'm open-minded to any particular outcome. And look, I definitely lean into people that know more than I do. I know one of them's in the chat, so I'm not going to sort of explain, give away the secrets, or whatever. But he definitely knows more than I do in terms of connections. And when he says things, I'm 100%. There's no intention to deceive, and I'm 100% hear what he's saying. But it doesn't make any sense what we've seen, the chronology of all of this. And I think that there's also a damage to the reputation of saying things now, like the very few communications that the club provide officially. If they come out and it looks like they've been like they said something a few months ago and it's deceptive, I think that does just as much damage as not saying anything at all. You don't speak, but when you do speak, you lie. That doesn't help.
No, I get that. I suppose the argument they would make at that point in time, it wasn't a lie. It was just not a full truth. I know that's a weak argument. I use the same with my wife at the time. I promised when I said I was only going to go for 1 pint, I wasn't lying at that point. It became a lie later on when I.
When I told you I was at the office, I wasn't lying. Just coincidence that the pub is called the office, but don't worry about that.
Yeah. So I mean, look, I think it's really interesting. I mean, we thought we were going to get a quiet international break, right? We know after the transfer window we've just had in terms of content, we can't ask for more, really, can you? But it's for me, I just can't see it. Like, so much of it doesn't join up. I mean, Levy stepping away without even getting a seat on the board. That was what I was anticipating would happen at some point. Because I think we discussed it when Vinay maybe first come in. I said, this is really odd having an executive chairman and a CEO. It doesn't quite work. There's sort of cross purposes. And, so does Levy get moved to a non-exec role where he has less involvement with the football, but still is obviously involved in Tottenham overall? But to not even have that, as well as step away from the, as I say, 3 million plus pay. So, he's now got. I don't think if you're Levy, it's in your interest to sell now, isn't it?
Has he definitely given up his 3 million?
Yeah.
Definitely, yeah.
So he's terminated as a director.
I think he's been sandbagged, Connor. I genuinely do, mate. Do you want to come over to Football Inc? I haven't asked Johnny, but I'm sure we'll be fine with it. I've got to wrap this up, guys. We've got Football Inc starting now. Connor, I don't know if you've got time.
Yeah, I can do half hour. So
okay, perfect. Yeah. Guys, I'm gonna do a couple of super chats and then we're going to redirect you straight across to Football Inc to carry on the conversation. Big up to you all for joining today, Oscar. Big up to you, my man. Super sticker. Big up to you. Choo choo to you, buddy. Choo choo to you. In fact, I've got to start do the noise. I'm OCD about that thing. which will happen if I don't do that noise every time there's a super sticker at the start of the train. Big up to you, Oscar. Dean Law, big up to you, my man. Always here, always generous, always supporting. Appreciate you so much. JB Macaulay, big up to you from Australia. Everyone talking about Lewis kids. They are in their 60s and seasoned business people. They will sell if the price is right. Money talks as always. It's just interesting that that Stavy's come out and said within a couple of hours, obviously, that they're not interested in a full takeover. Doesn't mean that they have to walk away from any investment. So it looks just interesting. Work in progress. Big up to you, buddy. Drew Zilla, member for 26 months. 26 months. Look at us. Who'd have thought? Always the best content. Love you, buddy. Here's to many more months. Come on, you Spurs Talk Show. Also chat. Smash the like. Drew, love you, my man. Listen, we need to do a members phone-in show this week, buddy, so we can get more of your accents. Drew, Iron Drew, we call you from now on. Love you, man. Thank you for the support. Super Spurs TV, member for 24 months. You're a couple of months behind. Drew, he says, how have I lasted 2 years of your guff? Big up Sean O'Connor. Much love, guys. Much love to you as well, my man. And bloody hell, Blaine, I didn't see this, mate. Super Spurs TV as well was gifted 10 Spurs Talk Show memberships. Mate, you're unbelievably generous, unbelievable support. If you did receive one of those 10, then please make sure you say thank you to Blaine. And please look out for the next the phone-in show. We're going to be doing this maybe tomorrow. Tomorrow night we'll do a phone-in show if Drew can co-host with me. Blaine, absolute legend, mate. Thank you so much, buddy. Thank you to everybody. Stay where you are. We will continue this conversation over on Football Inc. right now. And by the way, please, if you are interested in getting Tottenham shirts, thank you much to okjersey.com. £15 shirts, get 8% off with code Sean. Try the lowercase one. I think it's, I'm not sure if it's case specific, but appreciate you all. Also, 8 p.m. tonight, don't forget, the Football Inc. It's going to be not Football Inc. Spurs 5. It's probably going to be wild.
So money, you can't remember the name anymore.
I know. Love you all. See you in a minute. Bye.